And in the meantime, we're going to bring a film to our audience, which is inside one of these very controversial LGBT lessons. Because a primary school head teacher who is at the centre of a coordinated protest against her teaching about same-sex relationships has told us she is refusing to throw in the towel and give up. She's called Sarah Hewitt-Clarkson, and she has received threatening emails and phone calls. On Monday, nearly half of her children were held back at home from walking through the gates at Anderton Park Primary. Her comments to this programme follow criticism from her own MP, Labour MP for Birmingham Hall Green, Roger Godsiff. The politician says it's too confusing for 4-year-olds to be taught about same-sex families. We'll hear from him in a moment. Meanwhile, this programme has been given exclusive access to a school that's teaching from the books that have provoked so much outrage. The No Outsiders picture books are designed to teach primary school-aged children about diversity. Some parents, some members of religious groups object to the lessons about gay and lesbian relationships. Using the books is voluntary for schools, but from next year, children in England's primary schools will get compulsory relationship lessons. The teachers at Highgate Primary School in Selby in Leicester invited us into their class so we could see for ourselves and show you how the books are actually used.
I felt that the parents that were protesting didn't actually really fully realise what the school was trying to achieve.
Shiloh, what makes you different?
They've got different colour skin.
Lovely.
Clearly parents are up in arms. You do not have any support of the parents.
There are lots of different families and lots of different types of setups at home, but whatever the case is, that doesn't matter.
They can't tell you when and how they should be taught. You have a say in the matter. Stop No Outsiders!
Protesters are targeting primary schools because they object to a project called No Outsiders. It's a voluntary programme for schools based around a series of books which aim to teach children as young as 4 about diversity. For example, about single-parent families, adoption, religion, disability. But some campaigners, many of them Muslim, object to young children being taught about same-sex relationships. Because of the protests, 5 schools in Birmingham have now decided to stop teaching the programme, at least temporarily. And we found other head teachers around the country are now reluctant to talk to the media about the No Outsiders programme for fear it might provoke protests at their own schools. Leicester is one of the most multi-ethnic cities in the country. Around 1/5 of the population is Muslim. And some of the schools here and elsewhere in Leicestershire are taking part in the pilot scheme to teach from the No Outsiders books.
This house is for everyone.
We've been invited to film at one of them, Highgate Primary School in Selby, which is a few miles outside Leicester. Head teacher Troy Jenkinson brought No Outsiders to the school and has been helping roll it out across the county.
So No Outsiders is a scheme to teach about equality and diversity, and it uses picture books. I love the books, I think they're fabulous. You can't really argue with a picture book, can you? I thought that this was something that was really important for our school and for our children to make sure that they grow up in a society that expects everybody to be treated equally.
This house isn't for people with red hair, said Charlene.
Sienna Stodd is teaching her Year 3 class from a book that's part of the No Outsiders series. It's about a boy that won't play with children that are different to him. But he soon finds out for himself how it feels to be frozen out because of the way you look.
We're trying to create a generation of well-rounded children where actually we don't see difference as something that's negative. We actually see it as a positive, and it's things that we want to celebrate.
Shiloh, what makes you different?
They've got different colour skin.
Lovely, great example. Gadia.
some people can speak in different languages.
The most controversial element of the No Outsiders series is the teaching about same-sex relationships. One of the books is called And Tango Makes Three.
And in the Penguin House, there are penguin families.
So And Tango Makes Three is a story about two penguins that fell in love in a zoo in Central Park. They were both male penguins, and the keeper noticed that they were trying to copy what the other couples were doing, so they took an egg and gave it to them so they could bring up their own baby. No, why not? Why doesn't that matter?
It doesn't matter if they're male or female, because it doesn't matter, because if they love each other, they love each other. It's okay to be different. It's good that you're different. If you're gay, you can be gay. No one tells you who you're supposed to love.
What are we going to say to him? In school, I think it's important that we normalise all kinds of different relationships for children. Children are going to come across every type of relationship in their lifetime in society. So it's important that they are aware that different relationships exist.
But protesters in Birmingham say that No Outsiders stories like this that teach children about same-sex couples aren't appropriate for younger children.
I was quite disappointed actually that the protests have been happening, because I believe that actually the people that have been protesting don't really fully understand the meaning behind all of the books, and the fact that actually everybody's equal and everybody should be treated equally.
Only a small number of books in the 35-book series feature same-sex or trans characters, but Troy Jenkinson thinks removing them from the series would be wrong.
I don't think you can remove LGBT people from society, and so therefore I don't think you should be removing LGBT books from the scheme.
Some of the Muslim protesters have argued that their religious traditions are being ignored by schools teaching from the books, but Mr Jenkinson disagrees.
I think their faith is being included because actually there are other books that are in the series that actually relate to faith specifically.
As well as same-sex families, the books also look at other family makeups.
So we're really homing into the children that actually, even though there might be lots of different types of families out there that look different or have different setups, that we are all still the same and we all still love and care for our families exactly the same.
This story is called Blue Chameleon.
At Highgate Primary, teaching from No Outsiders books starts with the very youngest children in reception class.
For this age group, they're quite, they are lovely stories.
There are no official figures for how many schools use the No Outsiders books. The programme's creator says hundreds of schools take part voluntarily. Relationship education becomes compulsory, though, in English primary schools next year. This will include lessons about different kinds of families, including same-sex parents. This has already led to protests at a school in Manchester, where No Outsiders is not taught. There's been no vocal opposition to the Leicestershire schools teaching No Outsiders. Troy Jenkinson says parents are welcome to come and see what they do if they're concerned.
The children like the books. They start a talking point, they're a discussion point. Odd Egg, for example, is actually all about different family makeups and fostering. We have got children in this school that are fostered or adopted, and it's important that actually those children are represented as well.
We're going to talk much more about this in a moment. I just want to bring you this breaking news, and it is to do with British Steel and the future of thousands of British Steel jobs. And I'm afraid to say that British Steel has gone into administration. It's been placed into insolvency. That's the official term. The government's official receiver will now take control of the company as part of the insolvency process. As you probably know, this puts the future of 5,000 British Steel workers at risk. And it's to do with the fact that in the end the government did not say yes to the emergency funding which British Steel had requested, tens of millions of pounds in emergency funding. So 5,000 British Steel jobs in this country at risk, 3,000 of those at the company's plant at Scunthorpe and around 800 on Teesside. And the accountancy firm called EY will take on the role of the special manager and will attempt to find a buyer for the business. I don't think there are any buyers waiting in the wings. But the news is that British Steel, has gone into insolvency, and obviously we will bring you more reaction to that through the programme this morning. Right, let's continue our conversation about the LGBT lessons for primary school aged children. I've been talking to the Labour MP for Birmingham Hall Green. His name is Roger Godsiff, and he has criticised the teaching of same-sex relationships at a primary school in his constituency, Anderton Park Primary, which is at the centre of the most confrontational and recent process. And I asked Mr Godsiff why he believed it wasn't age appropriate to teach 4- and 5-year-olds about LGBT relationships.
If you're talking about gender and sexual orientation, which is one of the characteristics of the Equality Act, I think for 4- and 5-year-olds who are seeking to identify their own sexuality, I think to bring in other sexualities at that period in time, to a number of parents, they would say, well, we think that's too young. Why don't you wait for a few years before 11 in order to bring those subjects up? What's wrong with parents having an input into that?
What is confusing or not age appropriate, though, about saying some people have mums and dads, some people have mums and mums, some people have dads and dads?
As such, there's nothing wrong with that.
So what's the issue then?
Well, the issue is, if you're going back to Anderton Park School, the parents felt that they had not been consulted about the teaching of aspects of the Equality Act. And furthermore, they said, a number of them said, look, children are coming home with books and such like, and using words like, I have possibly another person inside me. They were concerned, and they asked to have meetings with the head teacher, and the head teacher, who I've spoken to and I like and I respect, but the head teacher would only have one-to-one meetings with parents, and I just think she would have been better off having groups of parents and explaining what the school policy was.
I mean, you know from the parents, sorry to interrupt, you know it from the parents' point of view, some of the parents' point of view, it's not just about a lack of consultation. It's because they think by talking to 4- and 5-year-olds and possibly a little older in primary school, if you talk about the fact that there are mums and dads, it will somehow encourage their own children to be gay.
Indoctrinate them. I don't doubt there may be some parents who think that. There may be.
You don't believe that, though?
I don't believe that. There may be some parents who also feel that they don't like the Equality Act and they would like...
But isn't it your duty as a public servant to explain to parents that you cannot simply encourage a child to be gay by discussing the fact that there are same-sex couples?
I'm more than happy to do it, and indeed...
Have you done that?
And do it. But it's equally...
That being gay is not a choice?
Of course.
Right.
Of course.
And what do they say?
Most of them take the view, well, it's not our choice, but that is an individual choice, and we have no problem with that. Most of the parents that I've spoken to take the view, look, we have no problem at all about LGBT teaching. What we do have concerns about is, first of all, the age appropriateness of it, and secondly, that the school has not consulted enough with us about how you actually carry out this teaching.
How can it... this is what I don't understand, and maybe you can help me, and maybe you've had to explain this to parents. How can a child be too young at 4 or 5 to know that some groups of people exist, like gay people? How can you be too young?
I'm not quite sure what you mean, Victoria, when you say how... You
say it's not...
Young people...
You say the parents are saying it's not age appropriate to know that there are gay people who exist. I mean, it's just a fact. It's true.
Well, you're homing in purely and simply on the LGBT aspect of it.
That's right, because we've been into one of the lessons.
There are 9 protected characteristics.
But I'm asking you specifically about that characteristic.
Well, so far as that specific characteristic is concerned, I think that is a matter for the school and for the parents to discuss when the parents will be comfortable with their child.
But don't you think even that sounds absurd? Well, parents will be comfortable when their child is old enough to know that gay people exist?
But parents, there are many international treaties that make it perfectly plain that the prime responsibility for bringing up children rests with parents.
Understood, of course. I'm just asking you if you think it's bizarre that parents might think that. That's all.
I don't comment on what other parents think. I personally don't have a problem, but what I do say, as I said to you before, I have a 3-year-old grandson. If I suddenly, or he was hit with the 9 characteristics being put in front of him, I think he would probably wonder what was going on.
When you say hit with the 9 characteristics...
Well, placed in front of him.
That's not what happens. I mean, one of the books is called And Tango Makes 3. It's about 2 male penguins in a zoo, and the keeper realises that these 2 male penguins love each other, and he sees them trying to emulate other couples, so he gives them an egg, and then they have a baby to look after.
Yep.
That is not hitting a reception-aged child with 9 characteristics.
Well, there is another book.
But deal with that one.
Well, I'm not passing...
I mean, when your grandson gets to reception,
no, but he's
not going to feel hit by that, is he?
He probably wouldn't, but he would almost certainly query if he had a book put in front of him that was called Why's Gotcha Gay?
Why's what?
Gotcha Gay.
And I don't know that story. What's the story?
I don't know, because I've only seen the front page of the book.
Well, then how do you know there's an issue with it? And your grandson might be confused by it.
Well, it's an issue certainly with a number of parents at the school, because that was one of the documents I was given by some of the protesters as a cover of one of the books that had been given to children.
It's a shame you didn't read that book, because, you know, it might be really age appropriate and non-confusing.
Well,
you know, basing it on a cover.
You seem to be, if you don't mind me saying, only fixated on one single issue. And this is an issue which is a much wider one about the teaching of the 9 characteristics of the Equality Act.
Sarah Hewitt-Clarkson, who's the head teacher at the primary school in your constituency, has been getting death threats. I'm assuming that you would condemn that.
I very much condemn it, and what's more to the point, when I was there meeting with her, I saw one of the letters that came in, and that letter was from somebody associated with the far right. I don't know the other death threats she's been getting from what sections of the community. I do know that a number of the protesters have also had postings and such like, which are pretty vile.
Right.
And I condemn all of that. But because this issue ought to be resolved amicably, and indeed a mediator has now been appointed by the City Council.
But at the same time as condemning the death threats, the threats, whoever's received them, you have also said to us, head teachers don't need to teach all of these characteristics to 4- and 5-year-olds, as though the head teacher at Anderton Park Primary has some responsibility for the protests at her school gates.
Other primary schools in the area have not had the problems that have occurred at Anderton Park. And
so it's the head teacher's fault?
Sorry?
It's the head teacher's fault. It's Sarah Hewitt-Clarkson's fault.
Well, it was her choice as to how to teach the Equality Act. Other head teachers...
but it sounds like you're saying so it is her fault.
Well, I'm not saying anything to you that I haven't said to her. I've said to her...
It does imply that you're saying that she's responsible for the protests at her school gates.
No, I didn't say she's responsible for the process. I have said very clearly to her when I met her, and it was a private conversation, but I'll tell you what I said. I said, I think you should look again at the age-appropriate teaching of the 9 characteristics of the Equality Act. You have my full support in teaching the Act, but I think you would be better if you reconsidered the phasing of the teaching of those aspects.
Thank you very much for talking to us this morning. Thank you. Roger Godsiff, Labour MP. Right, let's go back to our conversation about the No Outsiders books that are being taught in some primary schools across the country. From next year, as you know, it will be compulsory to have relationship lessons in primary schools in England. Andrew Moffat is the author of these books. He's assistant head teacher at Parkfield Community School in Birmingham, which has faced some of these protests. Simon Kidwell is head teacher at Hertford Manor Primary School and Nursery in Cheshire, and you teach from the books. And Amir Ahmed is a Stop No Outsiders campaigner. He says his son's primary school in Birmingham pulled out of the No Outsiders programme because of opposition from him and others. Welcome to the programme. Let me start with Andrew Moffat. I mean, you didn't want to do an interview actually for a while. We've been asking you for a while because of the controversy, because of the protest. Why do you want to speak now?
Yeah, I'm respecting the consultation process that's happening in my school now. So while that process is going on, I agree not to do any media, not to talk about my school and the protests. I think the reason why I'm talking now is because, well, it's Gay Pride this weekend. It's a time for Birmingham to be proud of our diversity and to put Birmingham back on the map as an area of super diversity to be proud of. And that's what No Outsiders is all about.
Are you encouraging children to be gay?
No. No. What I'm encouraging children to be is themselves and to be proud of who they are, whether that's about having different skin, different religion, a disability, autism, you know, or have different families. I want children to be confident as they grow up into global citizens, so they can live and work alongside anyone and live and work anywhere.
And Amir Ahmed, does that sound wrong to you?
Well, I think Andrew is quite honestly disingenuous. He has focused on the LGBT content in his. If you read his book, No Outsiders in schools, he has clearly focused on LGBT parts of the Equality Act, and he's not even. And it's not about teaching equality. If you're discriminating against one characteristic and teaching another one, that's not equality.
Sorry, what are you saying? Who is being discriminated against?
Well, he's discriminating against the children's belief as far as their family background is concerned regarding homosexuality.
Right,
and he doesn't even consider that.
So discriminating against Islam, effectively, is what you're saying?
Well, actually, I would keep religion out of it because it's.
Well, you brought religion into it, so I'm just checking which religion you're talking about.
I'm referring to belief. Because actually, if you bring religion into it, then you're skewing the argument, and it is about belief. You could have no religion and believe that it's morally not acceptable.
Let Andrew Moffat respond to that.
I want all children to know that they belong. I see this as a safeguarding issue. I want all children to know that they belong in Britain, they belong in school. We're all different, and isn't that fantastic? And really, I'd like to ask Amir, I mean, how many books in the 35 books, how many books talk about LGBT characters? I'd like to ask him that.
Well, in fact, you know, I'm not an educational expert.
How many books?
But we've asked the teacher to look into that, and the response we've had is that there's about 9 books that focus on LGBT. In fact, Shelley Charlesworth, a former BBC journalist, I believe, has said that there's about 9 books.
Andrew Moffat?
Out of the 35.
Well, I'd like Amir to name those 9 books, because I've written the resource. There's 35 picture books in the scheme, and 4 of them focus on LGBT. There's Mamma Mia in Reception. In year 4, there's King and King. In year 5, Tango Makes 3. And in year 6, My Princess Boy. So 4 out of 35. I don't see that as an overemphasis on LGBT.
Well, Amir Ahmed, if you're... How old is your son? Do you mind me asking?
11.
11. If he's gay, these lessons would help him.
Well, Victoria, at the age of 11, I mean, when they haven't even reached puberty, right, they don't know what their sexuality is. So, you know, posing these sort of questions, in fact, just detracts from the actual issue parents have.
He might be gay.
It is one of morality.
As any other child in his class.
Well, if he is gay, he should be treated with love and affection and guided in life.
Sure.
Right?
And I'm just wondering if these kind of lessons might help a child who is gay.
Well, they're not going to help if you're creating a conflict between the family and the children. Okay. And quite honestly, you know, Joanne Whittle of the BBC, right at the beginning of these protests at Parkfield School, interviewed me, and I said then that, you know, Andrew he's not separated behaviour from belief in the way he's treated the Equality Act. And his
behaviour, what do you mean?
Behaviour, as the Equality Act is about discrimination. Yeah. It's how you treat other people, how you behave towards them, and he has not separated that between that and belief. So he has not even considered people's morality. Now this is a faith-based community, and he's completely ignored their belief structure, okay. and he's implemented a program, and this is why parents are up in arms.
Let me ask you, Simon Kidwell, I'll come back to Mr Moffat in a moment, as a head teacher, does the anti-discrimination message trump belief in your view?
I think they sit side by side, and if you look at the materials, they're very age appropriate. I was disappointed with Roger's answer that they weren't. He's never seen a lesson. I asked him in the green room. He's never seen a lesson for 4-year-olds. Our school was videoed with the 4-year-olds being taught about the book Mama, Mummy and Me, and it's very age appropriate, and it talks about a child with 2 mums doing activities that other children do.
But unfortunately that would go against Amir's beliefs as a parent.
But we do have children in our school that have 2 mums who are in reception. We have children with 2 dads in reception, and it's very important for those children that they don't feel different, they don't feel their parents are wrong in what they're doing, and they actually accept that straight away.
Do you accept that?
We don't believe that discrimination, that belief should trump discrimination. In fact, they can sit side by side. You can, and in fact, Andrew says this in his book.
Can I just focus you back in on the example that Mr Kidwell has given us? There are some kids in his reception class who have 2 mums, or 2 dads, and so talking openly about that and it being fine.
I am addressing that, Victoria. Yeah. I mean, you know, those kids are human beings. Those parents are human beings. Kids at this, and when you're talking about lesbian and gay, there is a sexuality involved. But children don't understand that, but they do understand good human behavior, how to love each other. And you know, Andrew keeps going on about that it's about love. Actually, the issue for parents is love is, you know, is pervasive. It's throughout society, with your neighbours, your friends, your family, your parents, your siblings. Okay. But this is an issue about morality.
I mean, do you accept that? It's about morality.
I think it's an issue about tolerance. And actually, this is what the books are doing. They're teaching us to be tolerant about people. In our school, we say that tolerance is accepting people who are different.
Yes.
But it's also respecting people like yourself who have different views. And that's what this scheme does for us. It goes and teaches about families with different shapes in an age-appropriate way, but it also teaches us about families that have different religious views and people with traditional religious views, which is really important.
Well, look, Andrew says that there is, in fact, no more homophobia in his book, No Outsiders, and we've already achieved a position where there is respect and tolerance. If there wasn't respect and tolerance, Andrew's been an openly gay teacher at Parkfield School for many years. He's received no, he's been treated with the same respect by parents, just like any other teacher, and that's very clear that, you know,
the fact that he's gay is an issue of morality.
No, yes, but that doesn't make them homophobic.
Meaning you think it's immoral?
But look, if you don't believe in Islam, that doesn't make you Islamophobic.
No. I'm just asking you, do you think it's immoral to be gay?
Well, we don't believe that it is. We don't approve of it, and we don't. It's morally not acceptable. Yes.
How do you respond to that, Andrew Moffat?
Well, when we first started No Outsiders 4 years ago, we had consultation. We had 11 consultation meetings. Everyone was invited to our meetings, and we discussed this with parents. And that's why I wrote No Outsiders.
Sure. But can I just ask you, sorry to interrupt Mr Moffat, to respond to Amir Ahmed, who believes that the fact that you are gay is immoral?
My belief is that there are different people in the UK. I don't want anyone to be bullied because of their difference. So I'm not going to get into a discussion about morality. There are different people living in Birmingham, and no one should be left outside. No one should be an outsider. No one should ever be bullied for who they are.
Okay, let me read some messages from our audience who are watching you this morning. Schools should not give up on the No Outsiders programme, says this text. The protests claim it's against their religion, but they need to understand that they live in an inclusive society, and as they expect others to respect their religion and beliefs, they and their children should also learn to accept the others and their sexual orientation. P.S. And Tango Makes Three is a lovely book. David says, I don't believe children in early primary school need to be taught about same-sex relationships any more than they need to be taught about heterosexual relationships. This topic should be dealt with as and when questions may arrive. Let little kids be kids. Michael texts this, I'm disgusted by the absolute fear in people that somehow a book will turn their children gay. I suffered bullying all through school for being gay, and had there been more information and education about different people and relationships, I feel I wouldn't have been bullied. Ryan tweets this, teachers do a fantastic job. Parents should remove their children if they wish for them not to learn about the world we live in. And Jeff adds, these are all men. I do have some responses from women. I think age 4 is far too young to discuss LGBT issues. Let them at least have some sort of childhood innocence before advising of people's sexual orientation. 4 is just too young. Andrew Moffat, as a gay man, how do you respond to that childhood innocence point?
I'd love to show you the book, Mummy, Mummy and Me. I've got it here. It's a board book, and all it does is it's got pictures of 2 mummies going to the park, having some juice, having a snack, and then tucking a kid in bed at night. That's it. So in terms of childhood innocence, we talk about, does your mum do that? Does your mum do that? Who's in your family? Who's in this family? Let's all draw our families. And so I would say that's quite innocent, really. Okay. I'm just talking about there are different families, and it's really important, isn't it, that every child knows that their family is welcome in school. And I was listening to a report earlier on, with the MP, and I've got some friends in his constituency, who are 2 mums with a daughter in a school. Now, should we tell that daughter who's in reception, should we say, shh, don't mention your family, don't mention your 2 mums? Should we say that? Or should we be celebrating all families? And that's what this is about. It's not really about LGBT lessons, actually, for year 4, for 4 and 5-year-olds. It's about different families and all families being welcome in school.
Thank you, all of you. Appreciate your time. Thank you very much for coming on the programme. Andrew Moffat, the author of the No Outsiders books. Amir Ahmed, who is a Stop No Outsiders campaigner. His son's primary school pulled out of the No Outsiders programme, he says, because of opposition from him and others. And Simon Kidwell, head teacher at Hertford Manor Primary in Cheshire. Enjoy the half term when it comes.